We're going to talk about getting our parts prepared and measuring. What you can do is you can print out this kind of blueprint from Whitebox Learning. That'll give you all the measurements that you decided on when you designed your car. Instead of printing out all these big pieces of paper for our class, we usually give them a strip of paper and they write down all the measurements on here. And once you write down all the measurements, then you can measure all of your parts pretty simple. Alright, but the first thing that we're going to do is measure the chassis rails. Since we're going to drill holes where the axles go, we want these to stay right together, and we want these holes to be perfectly aligned so that we don't get any binding. So what we normally do is just take a piece of masking tape and tape them together. Then you only have to make the measurement once. Okay, we make the measurements once, cut it, drill it, and then it'll be ready to assemble. But I have a giant one right here that we can use to demonstrate how we're going to measure our chassis rails. So the first thing is you have a measurement that is called distance from rear. It's on here. Actually, sorry, it's right here. It's this measurement, this first one that's off to the side. This is 10 millimeters. Here I have distance from rear, and you'll see if this is the back of my car, the distance from rear is the very back of this chassis rail up to where I'm going to drill the first hole for the rear axle for these rear racers to go, rear racer wheels. Alright, so all I need to do is take this 10 millimeters. Here's my ruler. So my ruler is obviously here in centimeters. Millimeters are just each of these individual lines. So there's going to be 10 centimeters for every 10 millimeters for every 1 centimeter. So really, I've got 1 centimeter, and I'll measure that from the back here. And I guess I would need a pencil. That would be awesome. Maybe a pencil around. Perfect. Center, I'm going to make a mark at 1 centimeter right in the middle here, and that's where I'm going to drill my hole. Alright, the next measurement that I'm going to need to make is the wheelbase. So the wheelbase is going to be the distance from the rear axle to the front axle, and where people make a mistake is measuring all the way from the back. So my wheelbase is 225 millimeters. You see on mine I just wrote down the 225. So if I convert that into centimeters, I'm going to get 22.5 centimeters. So I'm going to measure from here. Remember, don't start at the back again. Start your 0 where you put your rear axle, and then I'm going to 22.5, and I'm going to put same kind of mark right there. Alright, so now I know where I'm going to drill my holes for my axles. And then the last thing that I need to do is the length, the total length of my chassis rail, which in our case is 250 millimeters, which would be 25 centimeters. This, again, I measure from the back because this is the entire length of the rail. And right here I'm at 25 centimeters or 250 millimeters. I just draw a line there, and good practice is that whatever part is scrap that you're cutting off, you just put an X on it. So now I know when I go to cut this, I'm going to cut right here, that's going to be my scrap, this is going to be my chassis. I can also write an R here for rear and an F here for front. That way I won't get it mixed up because they are kind of close. That way I always know where the front of my car is and the rear of my car is, just like that. You will also need to measure your axles. So remember, the axle is the solid piece of aluminum, and I have 2 axle lengths, front axle and rear axle, which in this case are 80 and 110, which would be 8 centimeters and 11 centimeters. So all I really need to do, same thing, measure to 8, put a mark there. You can use a pencil, just have to do it a couple of times. And then I can measure 11, so I'll measure from here to 11. And now I'm going to have, I'll be able to cut these, so I'll have 2 axles that are the right lengths. And the last thing is my lever arm. In this case, the lever arm is 155 millimeters, which would be 15.5 centimeters. So line this right up with 0, 15.5, make my mark. This, remember, is the hollow piece that I'm going to use a pipe cutter to cut. This, again, is the solid piece, is the axle, and I'm going to use snips to cut that. The last measurement that you'll need to make is your string linkage length. Now, you probably want to measure it a lot longer than this. This is 330 millimeters. I usually pull it a lot longer so I have enough room to tie my knot, and we have another video where we talk about putting all this stuff together. So that's measuring all your parts, and you're ready to get started.